My position has three elements. The first one is that any professional involved in educating the community, one-on-one, the public, about sexuality must have as their highest priority developing the competency and implementing best practices so as to avoid sexually abusing and traumatizing their clients. Position number two, that the best way to analyze High's current position in relationship to the dynamic of sexual abuse by a high facilitator towards a client is to look blow by blow, day by day, at exactly what they have done and not done, individually and as a group, towards myself, since most sexual abuse survivors, not High or other places, will not have a 10-hour recording of the entire abuse cycle by Peter Sandhill, and if they do, will not submit it to the entire High facilitator body and board of directors for review. In other words, most sexual abuse survivors will lack the evidence because no one plans to be sexually abused. I didn't plan on being sexually abused. I planned on having a psychedelic experience and paying a competent sitter, and I wanted a recording of the psychedelic experience and recorded the session so that I could remember what happened when I was out of it. And it just so happened that Peter Sandhill escalated a romantic and sexual relationship during my first psychedelic trip and charged me $175 an hour to do so. When you have a 10-hour recording, which in and of itself is a violation of patient privacy, to have to prove because your facilitators won't believe you, it's never going to get clearer than that. And so one has to think of everything the facilitators have done and not done towards me as the best case scenario. I mean, they absolutely, incontrovertibly know exactly what happened, and they understand the damage it's causing to the client. And then just look at what they do. So that my position is, regardless of what the facilitators pay lip service to in public, into me you see while silencing emails, that what actually happened to me is the current template for the facilitator and board of directors to respond to a case of criminal, traumatic sexual negligence by a facilitator. The third position is that it is preferable, if necessary, that High shuts down and that all of the facilitators cease practicing one-on-one therapy in any capacity. Then, to have unlicensed sexual abusers and sexual abuse enablers committed to secrecy at the expense of their client out practicing medicine. The fourth position is that the human heart and human relationships are as impactful and important for human well-being as physical medicine. That the chauvinism of our cult that says, oh, that's just relationships, that's just sex, that's just psychology, that's just people's hearts and minds. Why should people have to learn to be competent or get licensed to meddle around in that? My position is that hearts and minds of human beings are as valuable as their bodies, and that in many cases impact us more. And that the same degree of care that one would expect from a doctor, not to inject arsenic while you're under in anesthesia, and to hold that doctor accountable if they do, applies to any professional that's doing mental and emotional, psychological medicine. As a coach, as a therapist, as a psychologist, as a psychiatrist, as a healer, as a teacher of love, intimacy, and sexuality. And my fifth position is let the experts, those who have bothered to get a license, have bothered to go to school and study psychology, have studied the data of harm and harm mitigation, the probability fields around different psychological dynamics, let them decide what is and is not a best practice based on data and law. And let any leader or professional who will not provide alternate data to support their position, meaning it's innovative, it's science for someone to send out a 1,000-person survey in such a way that gathers unbiased data that suggests a change in the protocol. But it is irresponsible for an unlicensed, untrained therapist or healer or whatever you want to call it to ignore the best science and statistical data out there and just on a hunch or a whim or a lust violate best practices that are established by data without providing any data, any statistical data that supports that position, particularly in the face of the obvious evidence of evident and reported harm given by the victim of trauma, PTSD, heartbreak, and sexual abuse. Anyone who would like to come on camera, who has any data in this field, training, licensing in this field, that would like to challenge that position in law, in public opinion, in traditional best practices, in integrity with a world where everyone wins, in mission, has an open invitation to do so. And should this go to trial, that will be the responsibility of the attorneys hired with tax-free donations to defend the position, the counter position, which is that sexual abuse by a high facilitator is not a high issue, and all of the other positions that I brought up in earlier videos. That's it. That's the position in a nutshell.